We need to talk about the force that's pulling the universe apart, not gravity. Gravity pulls things together, holds galaxies intact, keeps planets orbiting stars. This is something else, something that works in opposition to gravity, that pushes rather than pulls. That's been operating since the Big Bang, but only recently became the dominant force in cosmic evolution. Dark energy, the mysterious component that makes up 68% of the universe's total energy mass content. We don't know what it is, not really. We can measure its effects, can observe that the universe's expansion is accelerating, can calculate how much dark energy there must be to cause that acceleration. But we don't understand its fundamental nature, and that's a problem. Because depending on what dark energy actually is, depending on how its strength changes over time, the universe's fate varies dramatically. In some models, dark energy is constant, the cosmological constant Einstein proposed and then retracted. In this scenario, the universe expands forever, galaxies move apart, but structures remain intact. It's a slow fade, a heat death, a gradual cooling into darkness over trillions of years. But in other models, dark energy strengthens over time. Its repulsive effect increases. And if it increases enough, if it grows powerful enough to overcome not just gravity on cosmic scales, but gravity on galactic scales, stellar scales, molecular scales, atomic scales, then the universe doesn't just expand forever, it tears itself apart. This is the Big Rip scenario. The universe expanding so fast, so violently, that the fabric of space itself is stretched beyond what matter can withstand. Galaxies are torn from galaxy clusters. Stars are ripped from galaxies. Planets are torn from stars. Molecules are ripped from each other. Atoms are torn apart into subatomic particles. And eventually, even space-time itself, the fundamental structure of reality, is shredded. This is not immediate. This is not happening now. Current observations suggest that if the Big Rip occurs at all, it's billions of years in the future. Maybe 22 billion years. Maybe 50 billion. Maybe never, if dark energy turns out to be the cosmological constant rather than something that strengthens. But the possibility exists. The equations allow it. And if it's happening, if dark energy is strengthening, then everything, every galaxy, every star, every planet, every atom is on a countdown to dissolution. Let's understand what we're facing. Let's map the progressive destruction that unfolds as dark energy strengthens and the Big Rip approaches. The universe is expanding. This has been known since Hubble's observations in the 1920s. Galaxies are moving away from each other, and the farther away they are, the faster they're receding. This expansion is a property of space itself. Space is stretching, carrying galaxies along with it. For most of the universe's history, this expansion was slowing. Gravity, pulling galaxies toward each other, was decelerating the expansion. We expected this. We thought the universe would either expand forever at a decreasing rate, or eventually stop expanding and collapse back on itself in a big crunch. But in 1998, observations of distant supernovae revealed something unexpected. The expansion is accelerating, not slowing, speeding up. Galaxies are moving apart faster now than they were in the past. This acceleration requires energy. Something is driving the expansion, overcoming gravity, pushing space to expand at an increasing rate. We call this something dark energy, but that's just a label for our ignorance. We don't know what it is. We can model it though. We can parameterize its properties using an equation of state, a relationship between its pressure and density. And depending on the value of this parameter, called W, we get different predictions for the universe's future. If Dostoevsky's 1, dark energy is the cosmological constant. It has constant density even as the universe expands. In this case, expansion continues forever, but structures remain intact. Galaxies move apart, but they don't tear apart. If W is less than 1, say 1.5 or 2, then dark energy's density increases over time, its repulsive effect strengthens, and at some point it becomes strong enough to overcome gravity not just on cosmic scales, but on smaller scales too. This is called phantom energy, and if it exists, it leads to the Big Rip. Current observations constrain W to be close to 1, consistent with the cosmological constant, but the error bars are significant. We can't rule out W West as 1.5 or even more negative values. We can't rule out the Big Rip, so we face uncertainty. The universe might expand forever in a relatively gentle fashion, or it might tear itself apart in a cosmic catastrophe billions of years from now. Let's assume the worst. Let's assume W dissolution 1.5, and dark energy is phantom energy that strengthens over time. Let's walk through the Big Rip, era by era, as the accelerating expansion tears through every scale of structure in the universe. Billion years from now, 1 billion. The expansion is noticeably accelerating. Not dramatically yet. The change from current conditions is subtle, but astronomers, if any exist, are measuring it. The Hubble constant, the parameter describing expansion rate, is increasing. Galaxy recession velocities are growing faster than they were. The most distant galaxies are disappearing from view. Their light, red-shifted by expansion, is being stretched beyond the infrared, beyond what even the most sensitive instruments can detect. The observable universe is shrinking, ironically, even as the universe expands. What we can see is limited by how far light can travel to us, and the most distant light is being stretched out of detectability. But locally, nothing seems wrong. Our galaxy is intact. Nearby galaxies are still visible, stars shine normally, planets orbit stably. Life, if it exists anywhere, continues unaware that the universe's expansion is accelerating toward catastrophe. The Milky Way and Andromeda have already merged by this point. That merger was predicted to occur within a few billion years, regardless of dark energy. The resulting elliptical galaxy, Milkomeda, is home to whatever civilizations might have survived the merger. And from their perspective, the universe looks mostly normal. A bit emptier in the distance, a bit faster expansion than their ancestors measured, but nothing alarming. Not yet. 4 billion years. The Sun, if we're still talking about Earth, has expanded into a red giant. This was always going to happen, dark energy or not, so it's hard to separate the effects of stellar evolution from the effects of accelerating expansion. But the expansion is becoming more noticeable. The local group, the cluster of galaxies that includes the Milky Way, Andromeda, and about 50 smaller galaxies, is feeling the effects. The outlying galaxies, those at the edges of the group, are being pulled away by expansion faster than the group's gravity can hold them. The local group is shrinking. Not physically. The galaxies that remain are still held together by gravity. But membership is declining. Galaxies that were once part of the group are receding, accelerating away, joining the expansion that's pulling the universe apart. And beyond the local group, the universe is emptying rapidly. Most galaxy clusters are now beyond the cosmic horizon. Their light can't reach us anymore because expansion is carrying them away faster than light travels. The observable universe has shrunk to just the local neighbourhood. From any galaxy's perspective, the rest of the universe has disappeared. This is isolating. Civilizations, if they exist, are cut off from the broader cosmos. They can see their local group, their nearby galaxies, but everything else is gone. Not destroyed, just moved beyond the horizon by accelerating. Expansion. And the acceleration is increasing. Measurements show that the Hubble constant is rising faster now. The equations predict that in another 10 billion years, the expansion will be strong enough to start tearing galaxy clusters apart, and after that, galaxies themselves, and after that, solar systems, and after that, atoms. The countdown has become visible to anyone who's watching the sky carefully enough. 15 billion years from now. The local group is under stress. The expansion is now strong enough that the outer galaxies are being torn away despite the group's gravity. What was once a bound structure of 50+ galaxies is now just a few, The largest ones, like Milky Way, that have enough mass to resist the expansion, but even they're feeling the pull. The space between galaxies within the group is expanding, not fast enough to overcome the gravity holding the galaxies together, but fast enough to increase the distances slightly to make orbital dynamics unstable, to create tidal stresses on galactic structures. And across the universe, galaxy clusters are dissolving. The Virgo cluster, the Coma cluster, all the great structures that dominated the cosmic web, they're being torn apart by expansion. Individual galaxies are being flung into isolation, separated from their neighbours by accelerating space. This is the beginning of the true unravelling. Structures that gravity assembled over billions of years are being disassembled by dark energy in millions. The balance that existed between gravity's pull and dark energy's push is tipping decisively toward dark energy. From any inhabited world, if any still exist, the sky is becoming strange. Nearby galaxies are showing distortions, their outer regions being pulled away by expansion, their spiral arms becoming stretched and diffuse. The familiar shapes are warping as space itself stretches unevenly. And the stars, within the galaxy, stars are still orbiting normally, but the most distant stars, those in the galaxy's halo, those loosely bound to the galactic centre, are beginning to drift away, pulled by expansion, torn from the galaxy that was their home for billions of years. This is what the Big Rip looks like in its early stages. Not catastrophic yet, not immediately destructive, but increasingly obvious that something is wrong, that the expansion is accelerating beyond what structure can withstand, that the universe is beginning to tear at its seams. 20 billion years from now, galaxy clusters no longer exist. Every cluster has been dissolved by expansion. Individual galaxies drift in isolation, separated by voids that are growing, expanding, pushing the galaxies apart faster and faster, and galaxies themselves are beginning to disintegrate. The expansion is now strong enough to overcome galactic gravity. Not for the whole galaxy at once. The core, where stars are densely packed, is still held together. But the outer regions, the loosely bound stars and gas clouds, are being stripped away. Milky Way, the merger product of the Milky Way and Andromeda, is losing mass. Its spiral arms, if any structure remains from the merger, are being pulled apart by expansion. Stars at the galaxy's edge are being torn away, flung into intergalactic space, isolated from their parent galaxy. From a planet orbiting a star in Milky Way's core, the galaxy looks smaller, fewer stars in the sky. The bright band of the Milky Way, the view edge-on through the galactic disk, is dimming as stars are torn away from the outer regions, and the expansion is accelerating faster now. Calculations suggest that in just 2 billion more years, about 22 billion years after the Big Bang, the expansion will become strong enough to overcome stellar gravity, to tear solar systems apart, to rip planets from their stars. The Big Rip is approaching. Not as a sudden event, but as a crescendo, a progressive strengthening of expansion that moves through ever smaller scales, destroying structures from largest to smallest, working its way down from galaxy clusters to galaxies, to solar systems, to planets, to molecules, to atoms, and there's no stopping it, no way to prevent it, no shelter from expansion, because expansion is a property of space itself, and you exist in space, are made of matter embedded in space, and when space tears, you tear with it. 22 billion years from now, 60 million years before the rip, galaxies are fragmenting, not just losing their outer regions, actually breaking apart. The expansion is now strong enough to overcome the gravity holding galactic cores together. Stars that have orbited the galactic center for billions of years are being torn away, not gradually, but rapidly. The expansion rate is increasing exponentially now, accelerating so fast that orbital mechanics can't compensate. Stars are flung into intergalactic space, scattered, isolated from any surviving planet, and there are fewer with each passing millennium, The night sky is transforming. The galactic glow is fragmenting into individual stars. Those stars are separating, spreading out, and the spaces between them are growing dark as expansion pulls them apart. This is deeply disorienting for any consciousness that might witness it. The sky, which has been stable for billions of years, is visibly changing on timescales of years or decades. Stars are moving, not in their normal orbital patterns but radially outward, accelerating, disappearing into the expanding void. And the expansion is felt now, not just observed but experienced. Objects that were gravitationally bound, binary star systems, planets and moons, even large asteroids, are feeling tidal forces from differential expansion. Space is stretching faster at greater distances, creating gradients that pull on extended objects. A planet orbiting a star feels this as a subtle stress. The far side of the planet is in slightly more expanded space than the near side. The difference is tiny but growing, and as expansion accelerates, these tidal forces strengthen. 3 million years before the rip, solar systems are unstable. The expansion is now strong enough that its tidal effects compete with stellar gravity. Outer planets, gas giants orbiting far from their stars, are being pulled away. Not thrown out by gravitational interactions, but torn away by expanding space. Jupiter's orbit, if Jupiter still exists around some star somewhere, would be expanding. The planet is drifting away from its sun, not because of orbital dynamics, but because space between them is growing faster than orbital mechanics can compensate for. And this isn't just happening to one solar system, it's happening to all of them. Everywhere in the universe, planetary systems are disintegrating from the outside in. The most distant planets go first, then the gas giants, then eventually the inner rocky planets. For any civilization on a planet experiencing this, the terror is existential. Your sun is moving away, or rather you're moving away from your sun. The distance is increasing, orbital period is lengthening, and calculations show this will continue, will accelerate, will eventually tear you completely away from your star. The temperature is dropping, not catastrophically yet. The change is gradual over millions of years, but it's measurable, it's accelerating, and the trend is clear. Your planet is being exiled from its solar system by the expansion of space, and there's nowhere to go. You can't move inward to compensate. Your rockets can't fight expansion. You can't migrate to another star. All stars are being torn from their planets simultaneously. You can only watch as your sun grows smaller in the sky, as the seasons change from warming and cooling to perpetual cold, as your world freezes in the expanding void. 3 months before the rip, planets are being torn from their stars, not some planets, all planets, everywhere in the universe simultaneously. The expansion rate is now so high that stellar gravity can't hold planets in orbit. Earth, or whatever planet might serve as Earth's analogue at this point in cosmic history, is being pulled away from its sun at kilometers per second. The acceleration is increasing daily. The sun is receding in the sky, visibly. If you watch carefully, you can see it shrinking hour by hour. What was once a normal-sized sun is becoming smaller, dimmer, less capable of warming the planet. The temperature has dropped below freezing everywhere. The oceans are frozen solid. The atmosphere is condensing into snow, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, all freezing and falling to the surface as the planet's heat radiates into space with no solar input to replace it. Any life that exists is dying. Not from the expansion directly. The tidal forces aren't strong enough to affect biological organisms yet. But from the cold, from the loss of energy, from the planet becoming uninhabitable as it's exiled from its star, and the stars themselves are fragmenting. Binary star systems are being torn apart. Stars that have orbited each other for billions of years are being separated by expansion, pulled apart like everything else. Even the stars' structures are being stressed. The outer layers of stars are being pulled by tidal forces from expansion. Not enough to disrupt them yet, but the forces are growing exponentially, doubling every few weeks, heading toward levels that no gravitational binding can withstand. 30 days before the rip, moons are being torn from planets. The tidal forces are now strong enough to overcome planetary gravity. Earth's moon, if it still existed, would be pulled away, accelerating into space, leaving Earth to freeze alone. The expansion rate is increasing so fast that measurements become meaningless. Distances that were stable yesterday are larger today, larger still tomorrow. The Hubble constant is no longer a constant, it's a rapidly increasing function, approaching infinity as the Big Rip nears, and the effects are becoming violent. Asteroids are being torn apart by tidal forces. Their gravity isn't strong enough to hold them together against the differential expansion. They fragment into rubble. That rubble separates, each piece isolated in the expanding void. Planetary rings, Saturn's rings, if Saturn somehow survived this long, are dispersing. The particles that compose them are being pulled apart, scattered, lost to expansion. And the planets themselves are feeling the stress. Earth's crust would be cracking, fragmenting, as tidal forces pull harder on the far side than the near side. Earthquakes would be constant, global, growing in intensity as the forces strengthen. The solid matter that holds planets together is being tested. Molecular bonds, electromagnetic forces, the strength of rock and metal, all of this is being stressed by expansion that's growing stronger by the hour. 1 hour before the rip, planets are being torn apart. The tidal forces have exceeded the structural strength of solid matter. Earth, any planet, is fragmenting. The crust breaks first, giant cracks open, spreading across continents, releasing internal pressure. The mantle is exposed, glowing hot, but cooling rapidly as it's exposed to space. Then the mantle fragments. The stresses are too great. Rock, even under the pressure of planetary interiors, can't withstand the differential expansion. The planet breaks into large pieces. Those pieces separate, pulled apart by space that's stretching faster than gravity can pull them back together. And the core, the dense iron core at the planet's centre, fragments too. Even metal, even under crushing pressure, yields to the tidal forces from exponentially accelerating expansion. Within minutes, Earth, any planet, goes from a coherent sphere to a debris cloud, fragments spreading, separating, each piece isolated as expansion pulls them apart faster than they can attract each other, gravitationally. This is happening to every planet in the universe simultaneously. Rocky planets, gas giants, ice worlds, all are being torn apart within the same narrow window of time. Billions of years of planetary evolution destroyed in minutes by expansion that's accelerating toward infinity. And the stars are fragmenting too. Their outer layers are being torn away by tidal forces. The convective zones of stars are being disrupted, pulled apart, scattered into space as glowing plasma. Even stellar cores where fusion occurs are being stressed. The forces holding them together, gravity and electron degeneracy pressure, are being overwhelmed by tidal forces from expansion. 1 minute before, the rip. Stars are exploding, not from fusion or collapse, but from tidal disruption. The expansion rate is so high that even stellar gravity can't hold stars together. They come apart from the outside in. The photosphere is torn away, exposing the layers beneath. Those layers are torn away in turn. The core is exposed, shining with the light of fusion, but only briefly before it too is torn apart. The universe is filled with stellar debris, plasma clouds, glowing gas, fragments of stellar cores, all separating, all being pulled apart by expansion that's accelerating toward the moment when even atomic bonds can't hold. And that moment is approaching, rapidly, exponentially. The countdown is measured in seconds now. Molecules are feeling the stress. The electromagnetic forces holding atoms together in molecules are being tested by tidal expansion. Complex molecules, Proteins, DNA, the structures of life are being torn apart. Then simpler molecules, water, carbon dioxide, nitrogen. Even hydrogen molecules, the simplest of all, are being stressed beyond their bonding strength. Chemistry is failing. The bonds that hold matter together are breaking under tidal stress from expansion. Atoms are being isolated, torn from their neighbours, scattered into expanding space as individual units. And the atoms themselves, the atoms are being stressed too. The electromagnetic force binding electrons to nuclei is being overwhelmed by tidal forces. Electrons are being torn from their orbits, stripped away, leaving bare nuclei and free electrons scattered in space that's expanding faster than light, faster than any force can propagate. 10 seconds before the rip, atoms are being torn apart. Everywhere in the universe, simultaneously, atomic structure is failing. Electrons are ripped from nuclei. The electromagnetic force can't hold them. The expansion is too strong. The tidal force is too intense. What remains are ionized plasmas, nuclei and electrons separated, no longer bound into atoms, scattered into a space that's expanding so fast that even light can't cross the distances being created. And the nuclei themselves are being stressed. Protons and neutrons are bound by the strong nuclear force, the strongest force in physics. But even this force has limits. Even it can be overwhelmed by tidal stresses from expansion approaching infinity. 1 second before the rip, atomic nuclei are fragmenting. Protons and neutrons are being torn from each other. The strong nuclear force, which has held nuclei together since the first moments after the Big Bang, is failing under stress from expansion. The universe is being reduced to fundamental particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, all isolated, all separated by expanding space, no longer able to interact because the distances between them are growing faster than any force can propagate. And even these particles are being stressed. Protons and neutrons are not fundamental. They're composed of quarks, bound by the strong force. And those quarks are being pulled by tidal forces that are now approaching the Planck scale. The scale where space-time itself becomes quantum, where the classical description of expansion breaks down. The final moment, the rip, space-time itself is tearing. The expansion rate has reached infinity. The Hubble constant has diverged. Every point in space is being pulled away from every other point at infinite velocity. Quarks are torn from each other. Protons and neutrons, the building blocks of matter, cease to exist, fragmenting into quark-gluon plasma that's immediately scattered by expansion that's faster than causality. And space-time, the fabric of reality, the structure that allows points to be near each other, that allows events to be causally connected, space-time is being ripped apart. The universe is fragmenting into disconnected regions, isolated, unable to influence each other, separated by singularities in the expansion rate. And then, nothing. Not nothing in the sense of empty space, but nothing in the sense that space itself has ceased to be a meaningful concept. The structure that allowed the universe to exist, to have geometry, to have causality, is gone. This is the big rip, the ultimate end. Not a slow fade, not a heat death, but a violent tearing of reality itself, accelerating from galactic scales to atomic scales to the Planck scale in the final billion years, the final million years, the final seconds. Everything that existed, every galaxy, every star, every planet, every atom, every quark, is torn to pieces and scattered into regions of space that can no longer communicate, that are separated by expansion that exceeded the speed of light, that exceeded infinity. And consciousness, any awareness that survived to this point, experiences what? The final seconds as reality tears around it, the dissolution of the substrate that supports thought, the ending not just of individual awareness but of the possibility of awareness, as the structures necessary for consciousness are ripped apart. We don't know. We can't know. Because the Big Rip, if it occurs, is not just the end of matter, it's the end of structure, of causality, of the framework that allows anything to exist. It's the ultimate ending, the unravelling of everything. Let's talk about probability, about whether the Big Rip is actually going to happen, or whether it's just a theoretical possibility we can safely ignore. Current observations constrain dark energy's equation of state parameter W to be close to a 1, with error bars that include both the cosmological constant W1 1 exactly, and phantom energy W1. The most recent data from Planck, from supernovae surveys, from baryon acoustic oscillations, all are consistent with WW of 1 within measurement uncertainties. This suggests dark energy might be the cosmological constant, in which case the Big Rip doesn't occur, but we can't rule out W more 1.1 or 1.2 or even 1.5. The error bars are significant enough that phantom energy remains possible, and if W is even slightly below R1, if dark energy strengthens even slowly over time, the Big Rip becomes inevitable. Just a question of when. If W's justness is 1.1, the Big Rip might be 100 billion years away. If W Scuria 1.5, it might be 22 billion years away. The exact timing depends on the exact value of W, which we can't measure precisely enough to be certain. So we face fundamental uncertainty about the universe's ultimate fate. The Big Rip is possible. We can't prove it will happen, but we can't rule it out either. We're living in a universe that might end in a gentle expansion or might end in violent tearing, and we don't know which. This is uncomfortable. We like to think we understand the universe's trajectory, can predict its future, can place our existence in a larger temporal context. But the truth is we're uncertain about the ultimate fate of reality itself, and that uncertainty won't be resolved soon. Measuring W precisely requires observations over timescales of billions of years, detecting changes in expansion rate that are too small to measure in human lifetimes. So we're stuck with not knowing. With understanding that the Big Rip is possible, with calculating what it would look like if it happens, but not knowing whether it will actually happen. Maybe that's the most unsettling aspect. Not the horror of the rip itself. That's billions of years away, too distant to feel visceral fear about, but the uncertainty. The not knowing whether the universe ends in fire or ice, in tearing or fading, in violence or peace. Let's shift perspective now. Let's move from the mechanics of universal destruction to the deeper questions about what it means to exist in a universe that might tear itself apart, about consciousness facing not just its own ending, but the ending of the possibility of consciousness anywhere, ever. The Big Rip is different from other cosmic threats we've discussed. Asteroids and supernovae and rogue planets, these affect individual worlds, individual civilizations. Even gamma-ray bursts or solar storms are local phenomena affecting single planetary systems, or at most small regions of a galaxy. But the Big Rip is universal, literally. It affects every point in space simultaneously. There's no safe distance, no protected region, no place to hide or evacuate to. When the rip comes, it comes for everything everywhere all at once. This is absolute, final. Not just the end of human civilization or Earth's biosphere or even the Milky Way galaxy, but the end of all structure, all complexity, all information, all possibility for anything to exist in organized form. And if the Big Rip occurs, if dark energy is phantom energy that strengthens over time, then this ending was written into the universe's initial conditions. It was inevitable from the Big Bang. Every galaxy that formed, every star that ignited, every planet that developed life, every consciousness that arose, all of it temporary, all of it doomed to dissolution when expansion finally overcame every force holding matter together. This raises profound questions. If the universe is destined to tear itself apart, what does that mean for the value of anything that occurs within it? If consciousness arises only to be destroyed, if complexity emerges only to be shredded, if meaning is created only to be erased, does any of it matter? One response is nihilism. Nothing matters because everything ends. The Big Rip renders all achievement, all creation, all consciousness ultimately futile. Why build, why create, why live when expansion will eventually tear it all apart? But there's another response, a deeper response. Meaning doesn't require permanence. Value doesn't depend on endless duration. The fact that something ends doesn't negate the fact that it existed, that it mattered while it was happening, that it contributed to the universe's total sum of complexity and awareness. A flower blooms and wilts. Does its beauty matter less because it's temporary? A symphony plays and ends. Is the music less moving because silence follows? Consciousness arises and eventually ceases. Is awareness less precious because it's finite? The Big Rip, if it occurs, is just the ultimate expression of a truth that applies on all scales. Everything is temporary. Your life is temporary. Your civilization is temporary. Your species is temporary. Your planet, your star, your galaxy, all temporary. And yes, the universe itself is temporary, whether it ends in a rip or heat death or big crunch. Temporariness is fundamental to existence. The Big Rip just makes it inescapable, undeniable, absolute. And maybe that's valuable. Maybe the certainty of universal ending focuses attention on what actually matters, not creating permanence, that's impossible, but creating value in the present, experiencing fully while experience is possible, being conscious with depth and presence rather than breadth and duration. Let's think about what consciousness experiences as the Big Rip approaches, because this is perhaps the most interesting philosophical question the scenario raises. Imagine you're a conscious being, human or alien, biological or logical, artificial, doesn't matter, living 20 billion years from now. Galaxies are fragmenting, stars are being torn from their galaxies. Your civilization, if it's survived this long, has watched the universe unravel around it for millions of years. You know what's coming. You've measured the acceleration, calculated the timeline, understood that in another billion years the expansion will be strong enough to tear your galaxy apart, and soon after that your solar system, and soon after that your planet, and eventually you yourself. How do you respond to this knowledge? How do you live knowing that the universe itself is dying, that there's no escape, no solution, no hope of survival beyond a certain calculable date? Some might despair. Conclude that nothing matters if everything is ending. Stop creating, stop striving, stop caring. Wait passively for the dissolution. Others might become frantic, desperately searching for impossible solutions, for ways to escape the rip, for loopholes in physics that might allow survival. Building ships to nowhere, since everywhere is tearing. Constructing shelters that can't protect against the tearing of space itself. But the wisest response might be acceptance, not passive resignation, but active presence. Understanding that the ending is real and unchangeable, and choosing to engage fully with the time remaining rather than wasting it in denial or futile struggles. This is the teaching of the Big Rip. Your time is finite. Always has been, whether you acknowledged it or not. The rip just makes it obvious, makes it universal, makes it impossible to ignore. And in that impossibility of ignoring finitude, there's a gift, clarity, focus, the understanding that the present moment is precious precisely because it's temporary, that consciousness is valuable because it's rare and fragile and doomed. You exist now. The universe hasn't torn yet. Space still holds together enough for atoms to exist, for chemistry to function, for consciousness to arise. And that's extraordinary, even if it's temporary. Maybe especially because it's temporary. The Big Rip asks, can you find meaning in that temporariness? Can you be present for existence despite knowing it ends? Can you create and love an experience with full engagement even though the universe will eventually tear apart everything you create and love and experience? If you can, if consciousness anywhere can, then the Big Rip hasn't won. It destroys structure, but it can't destroy the meaning that structure created while it existed. That meaning is permanent in the only sense that matters. It happened. It was real. It contributed to what the universe was, and the future dissolution doesn't retroactively erase past reality. Let's talk about what might happen before the Big Rip, in the billions of years leading up to it, as advanced civilizations recognize what's coming and try to respond. If consciousness persists for billions of years, if civilizations become truly advanced, they'll measure dark energy's properties with exquisite precision. They'll determine whether W is exactly 1 or something more negative. They'll calculate when the Big Rip will occur, if it will occur, and once they know, once the countdown is established, what do? Some might try to escape, build spacecraft and flee. But flee where? Every point in space is being torn. There's no edge to the universe you can pass beyond. You're embedded in space-time, and space-time itself is tearing. You can't outrun it because you're moving through the thing that's being destroyed. Some might try to change dark energy's properties, develop technologies to manipulate the vacuum energy, to alter the cosmological constant, to stop or reverse the acceleration. This seems impossible by current physics, but perhaps sufficiently advanced civilizations could do things we consider impossible. But probably not this. Dark energy is a property of space-time itself, pervasive, uniform, fundamental. Changing it would require changing the structure of reality, rewriting the laws of physics. That's not just technologically difficult, it might be logically impossible, so escape is futile and prevention is impossible. What remains is adaptation, endurance, making the best of the time available. Civilizations might consolidate, gather in regions that will tear last, the centers of massive galaxies, the places where gravity is strongest and can resist expansion longest. Live as intensely as possible in the time remaining, creating, experiencing, being conscious with full presence. They might attempt to preserve information, encode their knowledge, their history, their culture in forms that might somehow survive the rip, though what form could survive the tearing of space-time itself is unclear. Maybe quantum information etched into the structure of black holes. Maybe some exotic state of matter that persists when ordinary matter tears. Or they might choose to end on their own terms, civilizations deciding when to cease rather than waiting for the rip to tear them apart. Choosing the moment of ending, finding dignity in that choice even if the ending itself is inevitable. None of these are solutions, none prevent the Big Rip. But they're responses, ways of engaging with cosmic finitude rather than denying it or being crushed by it. And maybe that's the best that consciousness can do in the face of universal ending. Not prevent it, that's impossible, but respond with presence, with awareness, with the creation of meaning and value up until the last possible moment. Let's think about what the universe looks like from a distant perspective, from outside time if such a perspective were possible, viewing the entire history from Big Bang to Big Rip as a complete story. The universe begins in a singularity, infinite density, infinite temperature, quantum fluctuations creating the seeds of structure. It expands and cools, particles form, atoms form. Gravity pulls matter into clumps, stars ignite, galaxies assemble, planets form, life emerges, consciousness arises. For billions of years, the universe is a place of increasing complexity. Matter organizes itself into ever more intricate structures. From elementary particles to atoms to molecules to cells to organisms to ecosystems to civilizations to, perhaps, into forms of organization we can't yet imagine. This is the universe's creative phase. Expansion is slowing. Gravity is winning locally even as the universe expands globally. Structures grow, persist, evolve. But then dark energy becomes dominant. Expansion begins accelerating. The creative phase ends. The destructive phase begins. Structures start dissolving in reverse order of how they formed. First galaxy clusters unbind, then galaxies, then solar systems, then planets, then molecules, then atoms, then atomic nuclei, then space-time itself. Within 30 billion years or so, roughly twice the current age of the universe, everything that was created is destroyed, returned not to primordial simplicity but to disconnected fragments, isolated beyond any possibility of interaction. From this outside time perspective, the universe is a brief flowering of complexity between initial singularity and final dissolution, a temporary deviation from simplicity, rising and falling, creating and destroying, ultimately returning to, or approaching, a state of maximum separation, minimum structure. Is this tragic? From a human perspective, yes. All that effort, all that creation, all that consciousness, for nothing, or apparently for nothing. But from a cosmic perspective, the universe doesn't have a perspective, it just is. It follows its laws, produces its patterns, creates complexity, and then tears it apart because that's what the laws allow and require. Tragedy requires consciousness to perceive it as tragedy, and consciousness exists, has existed, for a portion of the universe's history. During that portion, meaning existed, value existed, experience existed. The future dissolution doesn't erase that, can't erase it. The meaning was real when it occurred, and when it occurred is permanent, fixed in the timeline, unchangeable by subsequent events. This is perhaps the deepest response to the Big Rip, meaning in the moment, value in the experiencing, worth in the having been rather than the continuing forever. Consciousness arises, experiences the universe, creates meaning, and then ends. Whether it ends because an individual dies, or a planet becomes uninhabitable, or a civilization collapses, or the universe itself tears apart, the ending doesn't retroactively eliminate the meaning that existed before the ending. Let's drift toward contemplation now, toward accepting the Big Rip, not as a crisis requiring solution, but as the ultimate expression of cosmic temporariness. If the Big Rip occurs, it won't be for billions of years. The exact timing depends on dark, energy's properties, which we can't measure precisely enough to be certain. But it's far enough in the future that it's not an immediate concern, not something affecting your life or your civilization or even your species' near-term survival. So why think about it? Why contemplate the ultimate fate of the universe when that fate is so distant? Because it teaches something important about the present, about the nature of existence, about the relationship between meaning and temporariness, about how to live knowing that everything ends. The Big Rip is the ultimate ending. It makes clear that nothing lasts, not you, not your world, not your universe. Everything is temporary, everything is vulnerable to forces beyond control, everything will eventually cease. And understanding this, really understanding it, not just knowing it intellectually but feeling it viscerally, changes how you relate to existence. You can't take permanence for granted because there is no permanence. You can't assume stability because the universe is dynamic, changing, heading toward dissolution at some calculable or incalculable point. What you have is now, this moment. This particular configuration of matter and energy that creates your consciousness, your experience, your capacity for awareness. And that's enough. It has to be enough, because it's all you actually have. The past is memory, real but not present. The future is possibility, real but not actual. Only now is both real and present, both actual and experienced. The Big Rip teaches you to value now, not because the rip is coming, it's billions of years away, but because now is always all you have. Whether the universe will tear in 22 billion years or expand forever in gentle cooling. Temporariness is fundamental. The Big Rip just makes it cosmic, makes it inescapable, makes it impossible to pretend that anything lasts forever. And once you accept temporariness, once you stop expecting permanence and start appreciating presence, everything changes. You stop trying to create things that last forever, because nothing lasts forever. You start creating things that matter now, that have value in their existing, that contribute to the universe's total sum of complexity and awareness even if they're eventually destroyed. You stop postponing experience, waiting for some future when conditions will be perfect for fully living. You recognize that conditions are never perfect, that the future is uncertain, that now is the only time you can actually experience anything. This is the gift hidden in the Big Rip scenario. Radical clarity about finitude, about the temporariness of all things, about the preciousness of the present moment. The universe will tear itself apart. Eventually, inevitably, if dark energy is phantom energy. But that eventual tearing doesn't diminish the value of the complex structures that exist now, the consciousness that arose and can contemplate its own eventual ending, the meaning created in the billions of years between initial expansion and final dissolution. Let's move into the deepest contemplation now, into the space where the horror of universal tearing transforms into acceptance, where the Big Rip becomes not a catastrophe to fear, but a teaching about the nature of existence itself. We've spent time with the Big Rip. We've walked through the progressive destruction, from galaxy clusters dissolving, to atoms being torn apart, to space-time itself fragmenting. We've contemplated what it means to face not just individual death or civilizational collapse, but the ending of all structure, all complexity, all possibility for consciousness anywhere in the universe. Now it's time to integrate this knowledge, to find peace not through denial of the rip, but through understanding what it reveals about existence, temporariness, and the relationship between meaning and duration. Start with this fundamental recognition. The Big Rip, if it occurs, is the universe following its nature. Dark energy, whatever it is not an invader, not an infection, not something wrong with the universe. It's a fundamental property of space-time, present since the Big Bang, expressing itself according to the laws of physics. The universe creates through its laws and destroys through those same laws. The same physics that allowed atoms to form allows them to be torn apart. The same expansion that created space for galaxies to exist will eventually tear those galaxies to pieces. The same dark energy that drove initial inflation might drive final dissolution. There's no malice in this, no intent, no judgment. The universe is not punishing consciousness or destroying beauty out of cruelty. It's just following physical law, operating according to its nature, producing outcomes that include both the emergence of complexity and its eventual destruction. You can rage against this, can wish the laws were different, can protest that consciousness deserves permanence, that beauty deserves preservation, that meaning shouldn't be subject to physical destruction. But the universe doesn't change because you wish it different. The laws are what they are. Dark energy behaves according to its equation of state. And if that equation of state has W equals 1, then the Big Rip is as inevitable as gravity, as certain as thermodynamics, as inescapable as the initial expansion from the Big Bang. Understanding this, really accepting it, is liberating. You stop fighting against unchangeable reality. You stop wasting energy on futile wishes for permanence. You accept that you exist within physics, subject to its laws, temporary by necessity rather than by accident. And in that acceptance, you find a different kind of stability. Not the false stability of believing things last forever, but the real stability of understanding what's actually true and responding accordingly. Let's think about consciousness one final time, about what it means to be aware in a universe that might tear itself apart. Consciousness is the universe becoming aware of itself. Through you, through any conscious being anywhere, matter and energy organized into patterns that can know, can experience, can understand what they are and where they are and what might happen to them. This is extraordinary. Most of the universe is unconscious. Stars burn without knowing they burn. Galaxies rotate without awareness of their rotation. Space expands without comprehending its expansion. But you comprehend. You know about expansion. You understand dark energy, at least partially. You can contemplate the Big Rip, can calculate when it might occur, can think about what it would mean. This awareness doesn't save you from the rip. Knowledge isn't protection. Understanding expansion doesn't stop expansion. But awareness is valuable anyway, not instrumentally, not because it leads to survival, but intrinsically, because consciousness is worth having for its own sake. You're experiencing what it's like to be matter that knows about the Big Rip. That's a unique state in the universe. Most matter doesn't know. Most matter never will know. But you know, and in that knowing, you're participating in something remarkable. The universe is self-comprehension. The Big Rip will destroy that comprehension eventually. Will tear apart the structures that support consciousness. Will eliminate the possibility of awareness anywhere in the universe. But it can't eliminate the fact that awareness occurred. Can't erase the billions of years during which consciousness existed, during which the universe knew itself through countless minds on countless worlds. That happened. That was real. And the future destruction doesn't retroactively erase past reality. You are part of the universe's self-knowledge. You contribute to the total sum of awareness that has existed from the Big Bang until whenever consciousness finally ends, whether in a big rip or heat death or some other conclusion. And that contribution is complete in each moment, doesn't require continuation to be valuable. You're aware right now, experiencing the universe right now, participating in cosmic self-comprehension right now. That's enough. That's everything. Let's talk about the distant future one more time, about what might happen in the billions of years before the rip if consciousness persists and evolves. Civilizations billions of years more advanced than ours might approach the question of the Big Rip very differently than we do. They might have fundamental insights into dark energy's nature. They might understand why W has the value it has, whether it's constant or changing, what determines its properties. And understanding might lead to acceptance more profound than ours. Not acceptance born of ignorance or helplessness, but acceptance born of complete comprehension. Seeing why the universe must be this way, why the laws produce both creation and destruction, why temporariness is fundamental to existence. Or they might find something we haven't imagined, some way to create pockets of stability within the tearing, regions where expansion is locally reversed or halted. Not escaping the rip, that might be impossible, but creating small sanctuaries that persist longer, that allow consciousness to continue for extra billions or trillions of years. But even such sanctuaries would be temporary. Even the most advanced technology can't fight infinite expansion, can't overcome the approaching 2 or 3 or more negative values, can't stop space-time from tearing when the tearing becomes inevitable. So even the most advanced civilizations would eventually face what we're contemplating now: finitude, ending, the necessity of finding meaning that doesn't depend on permanence. And maybe they'd arrive at the same conclusion we're approaching. Meaning exists in the experiencing, not in the duration of experience. Consciousness is valuable because it occurs, not because it lasts forever. The universe produces consciousness. Consciousness experiences the universe, and then consciousness ends. Whether it ends because an individual dies or a species goes extinct or the universe tears apart, the pattern is the same. Arising, existing, ceasing. What matters is the existing, the being aware, the participating in reality while participation is possible. Duration is irrelevant to this. A consciousness that exists for 1 second experiences just as genuinely as one that exists for 1 billion years. The quality of awareness, the depth of presence, the authenticity of experience, these matter more than how long the experience continues. The Big Rip forces this perspective, makes it impossible to find meaning in permanence because there is no permanence, forces you to find meaning in the present, in the actual, in the being here now rather than in some imagined eternal future. And maybe that's the ultimate teaching, not just of the Big Rip, but of existence itself. You're temporary, always have been, always will be, and that temporariness doesn't diminish your value, doesn't reduce your meaning, doesn't make your experiences less real or less worth having. Let's drift into silence now, into the final acceptance that comes when understanding becomes peace. You know about the Big Rip. You understand dark energy, phantom energy, the progressive tearing that would move from cosmic scales to atomic scales if W is significantly below 1. And you can let this knowledge settle, not as crisis or catastrophe, but as information about the universe's possible future, billions of years away, affecting nothing in your immediate experience. The universe is expanding, has been expanding since the Big Bang. That expansion is accelerating, driven by dark energy we don't fully understand. If that dark energy is the cosmological constant, the universe expands forever, but structures remain intact. If it's phantom energy, the universe tears itself apart in a Big Rip. We don't know which, won't know for billions of years, until expansion has proceeded long enough that we can measure whether W is exactly 1 or something more negative. But either way, heat death or Big Rip, gentle expansion or violent tearing, the universe is temporary. All structures within it are temporary. Your consciousness is temporary. This has always been true. The Big Rip just makes it cosmic, makes it absolute, makes it impossible to pretend that anything lasts forever. And once you accept this, once you stop expecting permanence and start appreciating the extraordinary fact of temporary existence, everything shifts. You're here, now, conscious, aware of being aware, experiencing what it's like to be matter organized into patterns that can know about dark energy and expansion and the possible ultimate fate of reality. That's remarkable. Not because it lasts forever, it doesn't. Not because you're safe from ending, you're not. But because it's happening at all, because the universe produced consciousness, because awareness exists despite being temporary and fragile and ultimately doomed. Be grateful for the experience, not for the duration, not for guaranteed futures, but for the actual present fact of being conscious right now. The universe will do what the universe does. If dark energy strengthens, it will tear. If dark energy is constant, it will expand into cold emptiness. Either way, structures dissolve, complexity decreases, entropy increases until no work is possible and no awareness can be sustained. That's billions or trillions of years away. Not your concern, not your generation's concern, not your species' concern for millions of years at least. What's your concern is now, this moment, this experience of being alive, being conscious, being capable of understanding the cosmos, even though understanding doesn't provide escape from cosmic processes. Sleep now or wake or continue your day carrying this understanding lightly. The Big Rip is possible, distant, uncertain, but its possibility teaches something valuable. Nothing lasts. Everything is temporary. Meaning exists in the experiencing rather than in the duration of experience. You are temporary. Your world is temporary. Your universe might tear itself apart in 22 billion years, or might expand gently for trillions. Either way, you're here now, conscious now, experiencing now. And that's what matters. Not because now will last forever. It won't. The next moment replaces it. And that moment is replaced in turn, and eventually there are no more moments for you, no more experience, no more consciousness. But the moments that occurred were real. The consciousness that existed was genuine. The meaning created during your brief existence contributed to the universe's total sum of awareness and can never be erased, can never be made to not have happened. Be at peace with that. With having been rather than lasting forever, with participating in the universe's self-knowledge for your brief span rather than expecting permanent existence. The universe produces consciousness and then destroys the structures that support consciousness. Both are natural, Both are expressions of physical law. Neither is more fundamental than the other, and you're in the middle, the brief window when consciousness exists, when awareness is possible, when the universe can know itself through you. That window is precious. Not because it's permanent, but because it's rare, because most of the universe isn't conscious, because most of time consciousness doesn't exist. You exist in the exception, the unusual state, the brief flowering of complexity between initial simplicity and final dissolution. Rest in that flowering, experience it fully, be present for it without needing it to last forever, without demanding permanence as the price of value. The Big Rip might tear everything apart in 22 billion years, or heat death might slowly dissipate all structure over Google years, or something we haven't imagined might occur. You don't control which. You control only how you relate to existence now, how fully you're present for the experience you're actually having, rather than the futures you're imagining or fearing. Be here, fully, completely. For as long as here is possible, the universe expands. Dark energy pushes space apart. Eventually structures dissolve, whether through tearing or through gradual cooling doesn't change the fundamental truth of temporariness. And consciousness exists despite that temporariness, arises despite being doomed, experiences despite knowing experience will end. That's courage. That's the universe's deepest achievement. Not creating things that last forever. Nothing lasts forever. But creating awareness that can experience reality fully despite knowing it's temporary, that can find meaning. Despite understanding meaning doesn't persist, that can participate in existence, with presence and depth rather than just duration. You are that participation, that awareness, that courage. For now, for this moment, for as long as consciousness continues, and when it ends, whether because you die or civilizations collapse or galaxies tear apart or the universe itself dissolves, what you experienced will have been real, will have mattered, will have been part of what the universe was during the era when consciousness existed. The Big Rip can't take that away, can only end future experience, not erase past experiencing. Your contribution to cosmic awareness is complete in each moment, adding to the sum with each breath, each thought, each instant of being conscious. And that sum can only grow, never shrink. The future can't subtract from what already occurred. Rest in that permanence, not of your individual consciousness, that's temporary, but of the fact that consciousness occurred, that awareness existed, that the universe knew itself through you. The tearing might come, or it might not. Either way, you were here, you experienced, you participated in the extraordinary phenomenon of matter becoming aware of itself. That's enough. That's everything. That's the universe's gift and your gift to the universe. Be grateful for it. Be present for it. Be it fully and completely for as long as being is possible. The expansion continues. Dark energy exerts its pressure. Space stretches. And within that stretching space, consciousness persists, experiences, creates meaning from the temporary configurations of matter and energy that allow awareness. You are that consciousness, that awareness, that meaning, for now, which is always all you have, which is always enough, the universe and the consciousness it produced existing together in the vast darkness, both temporary, both extraordinary, both real. Accept both, the expansion and the awareness, the temporariness and the experiencing, the eventual ending and the present being. This is reality, complete, honest, neither cruel nor kind, but simply what is. And what is includes you, right now, conscious and aware and participating in existence despite knowing existence is temporary. That's the miracle. Not that you last forever, you don't, but that you exist at all. That awareness happens despite being doomed. That meaning is created despite being temporary. The Big Rip is the universe being honest about temporariness, making it cosmic, making it inescapable, and in that honesty, there's strange peace. Not the peace of safety, nothing is safe, but the peace of clarity, of seeing reality as it actually is rather than as you wish it were. You're temporary. The universe might tear, and that's okay. Not good, not bad, just what is. Be here for what is, for as long as is continues, which is now, always enough,